Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 2014 Endurance Summit. This is Manny Aragon of the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance, and we've got another treat for you today. Today we've got a real interesting guy, and also he's got a really interesting facility and method and all that. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to share that all with you. For swimming, Bret Rose, and Bret, I might butcher this a little bit, so help me out if I do that. But Bret, he's originally a swimmer, and Bret got into swimming when he suffered a bout of spinal meningitis at a young age. Interesting how we all get into sport. But to regain his equilibrium, doctors prescribed swimming. And 40 years later, he's still doing it, and it's the focus of his life, of his practice. Now, while competing for Germantown Academy in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Bret earned the honor of National Prep School Champion in the 100 backstroke and 200 IM. This achievement helped him obtain a swimming scholarship to ASU, Arizona State. As a Sun Devil, Bret earned Division I All-American status in the 400 IM in both freestyle relays. While at ASU, he obtained a world ranking in both the 200 IM, 19th, and the 400 IM, 21st. And in 1985, Bret won 3 gold medals at the 1985 Maccabi Games in Israel. You'll have Maccabi?
That's 2 different pronunciations of that. Good.
Anyway, after life as a collegiate swimmer, Bret went into the world of triathlon, and as a 5-year professional triathlete, he represented the United States at the 1990 and 91 World Championships. Today, Bret is a passionate multi-sport athlete, swim, bike, and run. He lives with his wife, Kathy, and 2 children in Laguna Beach. And also, he's the owner of Swim Labs, a totally awesome facility who, if you guys haven't heard or don't know about it, we're going to talk about that today and what Swim Labs is and how it's just kind of revolutionized learning how to swim or properly, especially for triathletes and people with poor form or form challenges. So, Bret, you've got a totally cool facility. I really, really like what you've done down there in Lake Forest, and lots of cool technology. In fact, it's inspired me in a couple ways, which may or may not come up during this talk. But before we get into Swim Labs, can you share a little bit about your swimming and triathlon background with us?
Well, you covered it pretty well, other than making me feel really old. I think I was probably now 47 years later, I'm still swimming. But you got it, but it's always been sport, and swimming, triathlon, multi-sport has always been part of my life, even the void between retiring from professional triathlon racing to this point today at Swim Labs. I was selling the stuff that I played with. I was a sales rep for some great multi-sport brands like Saucony running shoes, Timex watches, Nathan Hydration, all the things that I'm probably most of your listeners have heard of before. And I was a sales rep selling all those good things for 17 years. And, you know, it's just sport. Multi-sport's been in my blood forever.
And you've been you came here from Boulder as well. I mean, Boulder's kind of like the Mecca in the U.S. for multisport. What was it like kind of doing that, the multisport thing in Boulder?
Well, it was pretty awesome, needless to say. Living in Colorado was awesome. Back in my day, you had 2 options. You either went to San Diego to train as a pro, or you went to Colorado, and I was always passionate about the mountains, and I love skiing too, so I opted for altitude in Colorado, and it was a great experience. And moving back here to California, not really back here, but moving to California was more a family decision. It was a hard decision, but a lot of people jokingly told me that it's a one-way street. People move from California to Colorado, not the other way around.
Very true. In fact, I have a friend who just moved out there, and I jealously look at his Facebook updates and on skiing and even the big rains they had recently and flooding and all that. So, maybe you can expand a little bit on your triathlon background. I heard you at a presentation talk a little bit about it, but what what distance were you a specialist in? What did you, where did you race? What were some memories from triathlon?
Well, I obviously, being a swimmer, I saw the sport of triathlon. I watched Dave Scott at the Ironman. I don't even know what year it was, but I think I was a teenager at a major swim meet, and it was between trials and finals. I remember it vividly. I was at the hotel just resting between trials and finals on a swim meet, and saw the Ironman on TV, and it was Dave Scott, and I just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and I just knew right then and there I was going to be a triathlete someday. And of course, I waited till my my swimming eligibility was up. Nowadays, triathlon is a intercollegiate sport, which is pretty cool. It wasn't back in my day. My swim coach in college, Ron Johnson, was a triathlete and inspired us all to try one year for preseason training and swimming. This is when I was in college. So my first attempt at a triathlon, cold turkey, no training, I was just a swimmer, was a half Ironman in the desert. And I remember being first out of the water. I think I finished the race at about 450th place, and I was delirious for a good 24 hours. And then when I came to, I woke up on the floor of my condo and I just thought it was the greatest thing ever, and I just was hooked from there.
Yeah, that first challenge kind of hits you over the head, doesn't it? And then you either like shrink or you go for it, and that's kind of what I'm seeing in triathletes.
Exactly. I was still committed to swimming, and I hadn't yet gotten to my triathlon training, which I couldn't get to until after my eligibility was up. But I was definitely more prepared for my second triathlon and did much better. And I knew I had a good knack for it. Of course, having a swimming background is a huge advantage getting into the sport, because that's most people's challenging discipline.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a few questions about that, but one of them is, you talk about even in your first race coming off the front in the beginning of the race, how, I suppose because you're a swimmer, maybe you really haven't had it any other way, but how would you think the experience is different coming off the front of a race from the swim than, say, coming in the middle of the pack of your age group or something like that? And there seems to be a lot of resistance to learning how to swim because it takes a lot of time for people. But
right. Well, it's an interesting question. On one hand, there's a lot of adrenaline. I used to look at it as I'm always in position to win because I'm off the front. A good analogy, or a great analogy, I think, would be when we watch the Tour de France or any bike race, and you see a racer take a flyer and break away on his own, a solo breakaway, and they're kind of dangling out there for hours, maybe 2-3 minutes ahead of the peloton, and they're just trying to hang on for dear life to get to that finish line before being gobbled up by the peloton. It's a very similar, if not identical, feeling. For me, it was just an extra adrenaline rush. I just tried to perceive it or get my mindset that I had a chance to win because I'm off the front, and it was just a matter of harnessing all that adrenaline and using it in a positive way, as opposed to worrying about how many people were going to be catching me or constantly looking over my shoulder. And that usually was the difference between whether I stayed out in the front or got gobbled up and clobbered, was the mindset, whether you let those demons into your head or you're just positively focused on winning and what's ahead of you and not behind you.
Yeah, so how did you make that transition? Like I said, for most people who aren't swimmers, you get into a race and you're coming off in the middle of the pack. People aren't even really, most triathletes aren't even thinking about winning or racing even. They're just kind of going. But I suppose if you're near the front or you're at the front, that's when you can actually consider yourself to be racing.
Yeah.
It seems like a totally different feeling.
Right. That's what I mean by the adrenaline rush. I think you get a little bit extra adrenaline. And, I used to always think out of sight, out of mind, so I'd always try to get further and further ahead so my competitors behind me wouldn't be able to see me, and then they would hopefully, take a little fire or take a little steam out of their engine, and just they would be racing for second and third. It didn't work all the time, but occasionally it worked, but that's what I had to deal with. I wasn't a good runner back in the day, and really that's pretty much how every race evolved for me. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Yeah, I suppose it's the end of the day kind of matters a lot too.
Yeah.
So
I'd say that, the tricky part was managing the effort on the swim, because the tendency when you get out in front is to charge and maybe light the candle a little bit more than you should, where you do have to have some confidence to hold back, keep your heart rate in the zone that you want it in, and not light the candle, and just have faith that you're going to get through it in good position, whether you're out in front or in the middle. And you certainly don't want to leave your race in the water. So it's a fine balancing act between, especially when you're off the front and you're a strong swimmer, your instinct is to get as much lead as you can and get yourself a buffer. But that wasn't only the smart way to go. Sometimes just you could conserve, maybe just go 15, 20 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds slower, yet still be handily in front and be that much more fresh for the bike and run.
Yeah, good point there. Pacing, it seems like it's one of those things that we come back to again and again. It's pacing and holding back sometimes, because I imagine, especially if you're at the front, but even in the beginning of the race for any kind of other triathlete, if you swim too hard, or a lot of people they overbike and then they cook themselves for the run. But so now when you're working with, you work with all kinds of athletes, but I'm guessing primarily swimmers and triathletes. Are you just working on stroke mechanics? Do you work on race strategy at all, or how does that kind of play into the equation?
We're purely stroke mechanics. However, some customers, if they want to discuss race strategies, I had a customer that just did his first Ironman, had never done a triathlon before, was not a swimmer, and it was sort of a bucket list bet thing for him, and he did Ironman Cancun, and I probably got a little bit more into the coaching psychology aspect of it with him than I typically do with most clients, but happy to discuss stuff like that. I really don't write training programs per se. We're focused on proper swimming technique and helping athletes, whether you're a swimmer or a triathlete, from the triathlete's perspective, really trying to focus on helping them become more efficient. And when they become more efficient, naturally speed will come, and it will help them also on the bike and the run as well. So really, the focus with triathletes is more about just becoming more efficient. And if you become more efficient, you naturally become faster.
Now, there are a lot of people out there teaching stroke mechanics, but you guys have kind of a special setup. And there's even people who are using, GoPro video and things like that. What are you guys doing that's so? I mean, I kind of know the answer, but for the listeners out there, like, what are you guys doing that's so different from everybody else, and what's so cool about that?
Yeah, when I first walked into Swim Labs, we were founded in Colorado. When I first walked into that facility, I was just blown away by what they were doing, and the light bulb went off, and I just thought it was the coolest facility I'd ever seen for swimming. And really, my first thought was, where the heck was this when I was swimming, when it mattered? And but you're right. There are a lot of coaches that can do a good job on deck. You can use GoPro video. You can use an iPad video to help see what's going on underwater. Really, most of the good stuff that's happening in a swim stroke, if not all of it, is going on underwater, and you can't really see it from the top of the deck. But most importantly is the immediate visual feedback, the instant visual feedback you get at Swim Labs. We have 3 cameras in a current pool, and alongside of that current pool, we have a computer workstation. All those video cameras feed the video into that computer workstation that we use Dartfish software, and it's thrown right up on a 40-inch TV monitor at the end of the pool, and you get instant visual feedback. And it's just a very efficient environment in which to do stroke analysis, as opposed to having to walk a pool deck with a camera, download the video, upload it. You just get a lot accomplished in a short period of time, and the lesson progression goes back and forth from the pool to the computer, to the pool to the computer. We add some comments, draw some lines, draw some comparisons. Another unique thing that we have is a video library of elite swimmers cataloged by stroke, by drill, by key position, and we incorporate that into the lesson where you can see what elite athletes are doing in certain positions, whether it's a high elbow, a hand catch, a skull position, center line position. You can see visually what we're doing from someone that's doing it properly, or what we're trying to get you to do from by comparing you to someone who's doing it properly instantly up on the screen.
Yeah, so I've noticed that one of the things that you guys feature is you have coaches bring their teams in, and it seems like, I mean, anybody who's in the sport would want to get their hands on what you're doing because it's just so useful and immediately useful. But in terms of, I'm sure you have people who you're coaching just by yourself, like you're their only kind of swim coach. What's kind of the progression plan? Like, do people only swim in swim labs? Do they swim outside? Like, how does that work?
Right. No, good question. And we're not a master's program. We're not a swim team. We're just a small part of a big process of learning to swim better, whether it's strength training, endurance, or conditioning. We don't do any conditioning. It's pure technique. So I think I was thinking about this. The best way to describe it is we're sort of the multiple vitamin to a good diet. You know, we're the supplement to your master's program, to your swim team club, to your normal training. And once you can get the stroke perfected, and we have elite athletes. I mean, everything from kids, 3-year-old, 4-year-old kids learning how to swim, all the way up to Olympic athletes using this type of facility, or our facility, to fine-tune their stroke. You know, in the swimming world, races are won and lost by hundredths of a second. So a little tweak of a finger or a toe could make that difference. To a triathlete where, you know, you haven't swum before, you're talking minutes that could be saved if we can learn proper technique. But it's not a substitute for conditioning. That's where you need to go to your swim club, your master's program, and practice what you've learned and practice your technique and combine your technique with conditioning.
Got it. Okay, great. That's a great synopsis. So for the kind of the average swimmer that comes in or that you work with, what would you say is the kind of most glaring obstacle or blind spot that you see, when they walk in? Is it their awareness? Is it their stroke? Or what is it?
That's funny. It depends. If it's I've watched so much video now, probably a lifetime worth of video in the short 6 months that we've been open, and you do see patterns. And with swimmers, usually the issue is, not much different from the triathlete, but the triathlete usually has bigger problems that have to be fixed before you go to the vertical forearm or the high elbow, holding as much water as possible. But that's the stuff that we refine with the more practiced swimmers. With the triathletes, one of the things, there's so many that I see, but one of the biggies is the lack of legs with triathletes. And I know it's often taught to drag the legs, or the philosophy is with some folks, or the thought process with some folks, is to not use your legs, save them for the bike and the run. And that it's true to a certain degree, but not to the degree of usage or lack of usage that I see at swim labs. I got people that they just simply are not kicking, and you got to help yourself. Kicking is not just for propulsion, but it really sets up your entire body alignment. And without kicking, you're really handicapping yourself. Now, you can kick kick comfortably at a decent tempo without tapping your endurance. So to find that balance is tricky, but that's probably the biggest thing I see with triathletes, their lack of kick.
Yeah, and that's a big one. I've swam with a lot of triathletes, and I can see that. And I remember at some point, once I understood the importance of body positioning, that kicking put me into a better body position. That became the reason for me to do it, because otherwise I was thinking like your typical triathlete, like I don't want to waste my legs, and it's like, with less effort, I would swim faster. So, and even with my four-stroke, it made a big difference. So that's huge. And thank you for sharing that. I don't think anybody else, but somebody who's looking at that every day could really say that,
Well, to add to that too, talk about going faster with less effort. The wetsuit, the evolution of the wetsuit has really changed the game too. Now, in my day, I was in the thick of it when wetsuits were being developed, and the swimmers were adamantly opposed to wetsuits because it was such a difference for a non-swimmer as far as body position and speed. So in the wetsuit, you actually don't have to kick as hard as you would without a wetsuit. However, then you're still talking about the body alignment, and I still like to see some sort of rhythmic, balanced kick to keep the body in proper alignment. So the wetsuit does change the dynamic, and most of the people, when they come into swim labs, most of my customers, we come in natural. We don't wear wetsuits. We certainly can wear wetsuits, and there are really two different techniques, frankly.
Got it. Yeah, that's good. That's a great point. Now, can you talk a little bit about results that you're seeing with athletes who come in, how that would be different from, say, you've been involved in swimming forever, so since before that, what kind of what's the difference that you're seeing in athletes in terms of progression rates and such?
Yeah, it's all over the board. I see some that adapt very quickly, and some it'll just take time. But naturally, I've got some young age group swimmers, between everything from six. I was teaching a 6-year-old butterfly the other day, which was amazing to me, where my 6-year-old probably can't swim to save his life right now. I'm working on that. But, you see time drops with the young age groupers, which is rewarding, and the parents will call and the kids will tell you how they did when they come in, and that's the most rewarding part of my job. Naturally, just helping people achieve their goals. There are also cases where some of my clients are still struggling a little bit. It hasn't quite clicked for them, and it just takes a little bit more time to make the adaptation. And then even just teaching some adults how to swim. I got a couple adults that were afraid of the water and haven't been able to swim, and they wanted to learn how to swim, and you're really changing someone's life when they can get over their fear of the water or fear of swimming, and that's incredibly rewarding. And that's not a time standard that we're looking at. It's just simply they feel like they're safe now and that they can swim and start doing some laps. That's incredibly rewarding. That's just getting them some fundamentals and some body position and some breathing habits that make them feel more comfortable in the water. And then finally, just getting validation from some very prominent coaches in the Southern California area that love what we're doing and have taken advantage of our facility to help their teams, help enhance the quality of their instruction with their teams.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about helping people out for a living, being in service. It's a special feeling, like you said, when you empower somebody to do something as simple as swim. The swimmers take for granted, but a lot of people out there don't do it. They're afraid. So that's got to be huge for you. And then of course the kids are probably. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure the athletes and all that are great, but it seems to me that the big ones are like the little kids and probably the people who are afraid to swim.
Yeah. It's fun. It's really, and at Swim Labs, we, like I said earlier, we do everything from parent-taught classes to little kids learning how to be water safe, to then developing a swim stroke with the little kids, perfecting that stroke where they can getting on a team, making the Super JOs, making junior nationals, senior nationals, Olympic trials, up to the triathletes, just trying to get through the swim so they can complete the bike and run. So it's all encompassing, and I get to see a little bit of everything every day. So that's really the cool part of Swim Labs too, that I enjoy the most.
Well, going back a little bit to your racing experience, what can you say about and I suppose even at Swim Labs, but coaching athletes again, but what would you say is like the X factor that separates those from the front of the pack from those in the middle, aside from technique? Because there's got to be some good swimmers who still, don't win when they should. What's your experience with that?
Well, being a well-rounded athlete, the swimmer absolutely has the advantage as opposed to where you've learned how to swim and compete at a young age, and it's sort of embedded in it comes to DNA too. You either have it or you don't. We all pick our sports. Our parents expose us to all the sports when we're young, and then whatever you gravitate to, you find your talent and you work it. So if you're fortunate enough to have the talent or the gene to swim, good for you. Balancing it out, you don't have to swim quite as much as others in triathlon, and you can work on your other disciplines where learning swimming at a late age, it's definitely more challenging. But so the biggie that I see with the triathletes, I've said this a couple times before to friends and people that I've asked, it's the triathlete has the tendency to associate success with workload and grinding, and I'm guilty of it. I was a grinder back in the day. But really, in swimming, if you can just slow down and take a little time to work on technique, I guarantee you will become faster, and you don't have to, you're so well conditioned from the bike and the run that don't worry about getting so much of your conditioning from swimming if you're a weak swimmer, and spend a little bit more time, carve out a little bit more time for technique, and I promise you, you'll see better results.
And I've heard that before. I remember there was an interview, and I'm going to try and remember this guy's name. I probably won't be able to, but anyway, it was one of the first amateurs out of the water at Kona and some of these other big races. And he said the same thing. What is your swimming training? And he said, I swim 20 minutes pretty much every day of the week, and I swim with the snorkel, and I always focus on form. He's like, I don't even do sprints or intervals or anything. And that was his secret to getting a really great swim time and putting him out in the front of the race. So okay, great. So for those of you who haven't heard of Swim Labs, go to the website, swimlabs.com. Is that your guys' website? What's the place that they can see where you guys are at?
Yeah, that's right. There are a few swim labs across the country right now. There are 2 facilities in Colorado, one in Encinitas, mine in Lake Forest. There's one in Vienna, Virginia, and shortly there will be one in Chicago. So it's the website, swimlabs.com, and then from there you can pick whether you're a competitive swimmer or a learn-to-swim type of swimmer. If I'm gathering most of your listeners are going to be competitive swimmers, and you pull down from the drop-down menu the proper location, whichever's near you. And that makes me think, too, that website, you'll see the little kids blowing bubbles, and then you'll see a pretty serious competitive swimmer. One of the neat things, most of us triathletes, or a lot of us, have families, and you really could be working on your swimming technique, and your child could be in the pool next to you learning how to swim at the same time.
Yeah, that's a great point. People will often say, I don't have time to work out, and I've witnessed this, and I'm sure you have too, Bret, where you're at a practice for your kid. They're at some kind of soccer practice or whatever it is, and the parents are sitting around eating snacks, complaining that they don't have any time. And I personally use that time to work out. So this is perfect. You're both going to work out. You don't have to worry about watching your kid because there's a professional there right with them. It's a safe place. So how do people get involved? Is it best for them to go to the website first? Do they come in? Do you do groups? Like what about people who are far away?
Yeah, and I think the website's probably the most informative place to go. Naturally, you could give us a call, but you can see everything on the website, and you can even register or sign up for a class on the website. But I'm always happy to talk to people as well.
Awesome. So again, there's, for those of you out there, this is a total gem. You got to check it out. If nothing else, look at the website. I have had a great experience with Bret. I went in and checked it out, and I've been to a couple of his presentations. And by the way, my master's coach, Mike Collins, who is also a panelist, speaks extremely highly of Bret. He says that he said something about getting spanked by you out of the water, and I've never heard Mike say that about anybody. So,
well, Mike and I were teammates. On the National Triathlon Training Camp team. Gosh, the first year I started triathlon, so he was one of the first people I met in the sport, and it's just ironic that here we are in the same community providing similar services to triathletes and swimmers in Orange County. And for those of you, I know I talked about the website, for those of you that want to go the traditional route, our phone number is 949-716-6370.
Awesome. So yeah, definitely check it out. Give him a call. Connect with Bret. He's an awesome guy. The facility is first rate and super, super cool. I guarantee you'll love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bret. Just another, kind of gem for folks out there who are not in the know, that this is available to you, and definitely use it, and put it in your quiver. This is for those of you who have coaches who aren't in here yet. You can bring them in. Bret's got programs for that. You bring your coach in, bring your team in. So definitely take advantage. So anyway, thanks again. And this is Manny Aragon signing out for the 2014 Endurance Summit. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.